Today with us here is Pieter. He's the founder and CEO, co-CEO, I learned, of Adyen. And he's addressing a super interesting question. Because if you want to get to that scale, and I think you're at 2 billion in revenues more or less, at least last year, you know, that's not easy. So I think many of the founders and CEOs we speak to at Float, they focus on how can we grow and scale the product, how can we grow and scale our processes. But I've rarely heard anybody speak about how to grow and scale the culture. Now, that's what Pieter is here for. And he encouraged us, or encouraged you, to ask questions all the way through his talk. Thank you very much, and welcome on stage, Pieter.
So, I wanted to tell you something which is in the background of my views on how you scale culture. And that is, years and years ago, we had a company and we sold it to a large corporate. So think 70 people being sold to a company of 120,000 people. And I was surprised how quickly you can kill a culture. And it was also the opportunity to look into the future, because when we started Adyen, we did that with the idea of building a very large company. And what happened? A few things. We were acquired by a UK company. So let me take the engineer point of view. If you did something right in the eyes of the company, you had to fly to London. Then you had on Friday evening a reward dinner. Then you couldn't fly home anymore, so you were flying home on Saturday, and you wasted about 2 days that you could have coded a lot. And all you wanted is actually a manager that could read your code and could see how smart you are and how well you contributed to the mission. And the problem is, what did the company provide to you? A manager that could make spreadsheets and could chase you, but had no idea what you were doing. So in that quick window, I saw weird travel policies. Within half a year, the motivation went from here to here. So having gone through that experience, I signed a lockup for 2 years. That, of course, then I thought that when we build our own company, we have to be very careful. Who of you has heard of the Adyen formula? Oh, that's good, no one. Let me explain it to you. When Arnoud, my co-founder, and I, through the first years of Adyen, we found out that we were talking about the same points so often, and those were actually lessons learned. And we were 5 years in, and we thought we're not gonna tell the same story over and over again. We need to make it more structured. So what we did is, we built the Adyen formula. And the Adyen formula for us were 8 points to explain people how we wanted them to behave. And in those days, all the companies were doing aspiring statements. We thought, let's be very instructive. This is what I want you to do. It's on our website, if you so it survived everything in almost 15 years. I want to put a few, there are a few that I'd like to specifically talk about. One of them is, we build to the benefit of all customers. Why is that one important for us? We were, from the beginning on, a very long-term company. So rather than chasing quarter per quarter, we wanted to build out a strategic plan. If a customer asked for something that fitted with the plan, we would build it. But if a customer asked for something that was a one-off, then we said that doesn't scale, that doesn't work for us in the future, so long-term that'll work against us. And of course, also in this company we made one mistake because we did it for a large airline. They said, we're gonna integrate you with an airline protocol, and we didn't have that much volume, so we thought, let's do it. Then you have an exception in your system. So the amount of problems that you get because of that is enormous. It's a security challenge because you have a different interface. if you upgrade the systems, you always forget the non-standard way of connecting to our platform. So we are very, very strict about that. If you ask, I want a Japanese payment method, then we would say yes, because all our merchants could potentially use that payment method, not all will. If you ask for a specific protocol for your company, we wouldn't. Any questions so far?
Like this seems something that you guys probably then did quite a bit, right? So that you had difficulty scaling because of that? Or why was it such a big point for you?
That's a good question. It was such a big point for us because in our first company, I was chief commercial officer there, also co-founder, and I got in Microsoft. It's like, oh, Microsoft, that's not bad, right? And Microsoft didn't believe in the way that we were connecting, so they wanted IPsec and then another protocol. And our service level of all the companies we had, if you had the smallest shop, you would outperform on our platform. You would outperform Microsoft because the one-offs are too difficult to give the same service level. If you work to a certain, I wouldn't say standardization, but if you make sure that the code that you build is being used by your customers, and we call that the concept of continuous innovation. So if you become an Adyen customer, we do payments. What you get today is something else than what you get in a year from today. But we can only deliver on that promise if we don't waste resources on one-offs. So with my commercial background, it really hurts. Because there are deals where it's like, it's only this much and this much revenue, let's do this. So one of the reasons why we write down the formula, a lot of the behaviors, the things you would do, but somewhere in the back of your head, you know you shouldn't.
Maybe a follow-up question, if it's okay.
Please.
I'm curious, like in the first company you did, obviously built a lot of credibility. So in the second company you had obviously a bit more luxury with and knowledge and know-how and to take perhaps also a little bit more time. Would your first company would have been successful if you hadn't landed, for example, Microsoft as a flagship customer? Would you have done it differently in the first company?
So I didn't really,
So you said in your first company, you landed Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
You made some exceptions sort of in product development that made everything more complex. My question is, would your first company would have been successful if you had not landed that flagship customer? Would you have done it differently, or were you, cash constrained? Did you have
it's a very intriguing question because at a certain point, the majority of the shareholders wanted to sell the first company, and I wanted to keep it. And I only got with a strategic investor. I only got to 80% of the value that a strategic buyer would give for the company. So I missed 20%. So it was sold against my will, and I had to work there for 2 years. So I worked 2 days a week in London, and the answer is, I think it was to our advantage. I think we could have changed that first company because it was also payments into this, but it was an opportunity to start with a blank sheet, to have no legacy, and to have more discipline and to better know what you want to build. So with hindsight, I think it was a lucky accident, but it was definitely not visionary. It happened to me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Long term. Very, very, I don't know where it's on the sheet, but I can still talk about it. Long term is what this company is. And that means that we also don't develop things just where we know we can do something on the short term. We want something for the benefit of our merchant, that long term they will benefit from the partnership. That's also sometimes difficult because you want to close the deal. The most important one is we use each other to sharpen our mind. Why do I find that so important? If you want to have a company that scales very quickly, and I'm always more on the HR side than on the budget, numbers, execution of do we have the right plan? I more believe that very talented people can surprise you, will come up with solutions that you didn't think of. So what do very talented people need for that? Very talented people need for that a structure that they know that they are supposed to act themselves. And one of the things that we do is we say, if you act according to the formula, you're allowed to make the decisions yourself. And what does that mean? It means that if you have an idea, that you use your peers to debug it. Because that leads to delegated decision making, very quick decisions, and that leads to also sometimes positive surprises. So if you follow those 8 things, you can at a delegated level take decisions. So that could be you're in product, you want to launch something, you talk to tech support says not enough interfaces, if you launch this, we'll get way too many tickets. So you decide together, maybe launch it for one customer, maybe build first interfaces, and I don't need to know what you get to together. So that is one of the key elements. Other questions? Then Adyen is very, very specific on HR. We say in this structure, I could also move it. So in this structure, we have talent. We need very talented people and give them the freedom. It doesn't work if you try to. Some companies are specialized in making 6s work at the level of the 7s. We try to recruit the 9s. And to do that means that, and I give a few examples, our travel policy doesn't exist. So if you feel you need, as an account manager, to be in San Francisco this Friday, you could book a ticket and you could fly there. But it needs to be no blush. And no blush means that you could explain to this audience why that's a good idea and why that's good for Adyen. When our former company was acquired, the travel policy took 2 weeks. We had salespeople that were so frustrated that they were traveling at their own cost because they thought, if I see that merchant, I can probably land it and then I get commission. So who cares about the travel policy? So people become activistic rather than motivated by the company. Who you see here is Brooke, our head of HR. She thought that when she would be asked into the board, first thing she would do is kill the travel policy, because our travel policy is no travel policy. Our policy is that we don't fly business intercontinental, but that you are allowed to do economy plus, and the rest of it is economy. She didn't kill the program, because a good leader within our company is curious, and then think like, hey, what does it? Each program has the pros and the cons. What's the pro of this program? That is that some people will abuse it, but with a few checks on our travel expenses, you can identify those people. And then usually they're underperformance, they have a weak manager, so it's a whole spot of underperformance. So actually the self-hygiene is very good, because you're pointed into here, you should investigate. So then she wants to keep it. It's an element of the people that we recruit, people that are curious, that before they implement something, first look at what's there. And we do final interviews ourselves with the board. So nobody can be hired without having seen a board member. Until very, very recently that was the case. We expanded the group a little bit. But think about it, you are an office manager in Brazil, and to be able to be hired, you have to speak to one of the 6 of us to get... Why? Because there's a conflict of interest. The manager often is very busy. Things like, it's not really a 9, but it's an 8. And then a board member who's more distant from it thinks like, this is not a 9, let's not do it. And that's how you keep a group of very talented people where it's... I mean, if you can play tennis with Serena Williams, are you going to complain about how often you get new balls and if you have a ball boy carrying around your stuff? Probably not. That's the concept that we try to get. You play with the strongest people. That's the biggest attraction of talent. Questions? Other parts of the formula, if you wish, or about our talent policy?
I have a couple of questions. Let's see.
Do you think that the change that you made now, where there are people that don't talk to the board, do you think that might make like an impact down the line?
In theory, the global leadership team of a company with 4,500 people, it shouldn't be just board members. In practice, now that we are hiring less people, we shrunk it again. So my official answer is it doesn't make any difference. In reality, as soon as I could, I made it smaller again to have it more controlled.
So my question is, you obviously put a lot of thought, time and energy into distilling this formula. Have you typically seen any one of these being the pain points or challenges for the team to rise up to?
If I've seen one of them to be a pain point?
Yeah, for the team to rise up to, because these are standards you're setting for the whole organization. Right?
So all of them, there's a whole story attached to it. And the one which is, we launch fast and iterate, what we actually mean to say there is, we look for quick feedback. And it's currently the one which we might change, because it has been abused by engineers to kick out crap. That was not the intent. It was showing something to the merchant and say like, hey, imagine that there's a certain fraud pattern and we train our systems to react on it. Does it work or doesn't it work? Let's look together if it creates false positives. It wasn't intended to just do something and say, oh, we launch fast. So when we were smaller, people understood that and that we do it all over. If we start a training, and it's specifically designed for Adyen, then we run that training in a small group with guinea pigs, and then we take that feedback and only then we roll it out. It's launch fast and iterate. It's the one that's most misunderstood. It's very valuable. I still believe quick feedback makes the products better, but it doesn't scale very well. So I think if I stand here in 2 years from today, or even in a few months from today, the launch fast and iterate is replaced by we. I'm not good at English, so I'm not going to design it, but it's going to be like we seek feedback quickly on our new products or something like that.
Thank you so much, Pieter. Unfortunately, we are running
Two more questions. I saw two more. Sorry, 2 more hands. Okay.
Thank you. How do you measure if your employees are applying the formula?
So the formula is, that's a very good question, because you can put on paper whatever you want. So formula comes back everywhere, and it's even part of how you are being ranked, your performance, by your manager in your half-year reviews and in your year reviews. And if you underscore on the formula, that's then directly related to how you score yourself. And it's the main reason why we let people go. Not because we have such an elaborate recruitment process, people are smart, they're talented. But if it's not a fit, so if they cannot work in that way, if they don't want to pick up the phone, if they start working solistically, that's when it turns sour.
Hi. So I wanted to ask about hiring the nines. How do you identify them in that one round which you do with them?
Hiding behind email. Yeah, so the speaker is in the other direction.
No, you mentioned that you are trying to hire the nines or the quality talent. How do you identify those in your when you have the interview with them?
I think it's about the hiring process, how we qualify them. by the time it lands on my desk, people have been always asked all the questions, like where do you see yourself in 5 years, or all the cliche things. Coders have been through a coding test. Commercial people have been through cases. So I wouldn't ask anything like that. For me, it's pure motivational discussion. So I want to know why it's logical to join the company, and I'll ask stupid questions, because stupid questions tend to make people give honest answers. So if I ask you, okay, by an act of God, you're now applying for a role of Adyen in Amsterdam, imagine we have offices all over the world. You're not allowed to work in Adyen. Which office do you choose? And then somebody says, oh, I joined Chicago because that's where you have a bunch of engineers, and that would be cool to join that group. Or somebody says, I like to lay in the sun. I'd like to work in Spain for you. Which can be okay, but then that's a start for my next question is, okay, how does that, I like to be in the sun, so how does that balance off? And it gives you a thread for a discussion where I try to get, as if you try to become friends with someone, where you try to understand what makes them tick, because on the content side they can do the job. Now it's about how are they motivated, why are they doing this. I had somebody who at a certain point got totally stuck. And I'm like, we're totally stuck, what's going on? He said like, well, I have to leave the country if I don't find a job within a month. So that's my real motivation why I want the role. So those are the things which you get out. If you, as a final interview, don't ask content questions anymore.